All right, so I'm over here in my GitHub account. Let's go ahead and create a new repository. Now, one thing you'll notice at the top here, since I work with a few different organizations, I have the option to create this repository associated with one of these organizations. You likely don't have this unless you are actually working for a company or an organization that has private GitHub instance. So for right now, we're just going to ignore that. I don't need to select anything. Now, you can also choose a template. There's no options here, but this is kind of a cool feature of GitHub where you can create templates so that your new repositories that you initiate actually follow kind of a certain setup and structure. But we're not going to do that right now. All right, so here are the things I need to fill out. First of all, I need to go ahead and select an owner. I'm going to select myself. There's a few other GitHub organizations I'm associated with that I could link this repo to, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to keep it in my personal account. And you know what? We're going to go ahead and I think we're going to make like a Flask app that serves some pretty bad dad jokes. So I'm going to go ahead and just name this repository Bad Dad Jokes. Let's see if that's available. It is available. We'll keep it at that. And just give it a nice little description. Now you have the option to make this public or private. Private just means no one else could see it except for yourself or anyone that you allow to see. Public is anyone can find this repository on GitHub. So I'm going to go ahead and just keep this public. Okay, so we got a few more options here, and these are files that we can actually choose to have created for us when we initialize a repository. The first one is a README file, and a README file is a standard way to kind of add documentation to your project, and it's often the first thing that a visitor is going to see when they come to your GitHub repo. So to give you an example, if I switch over to a repo, here's a class that I teach, and you can see here's the README, and you can see we have a heading, we've got a bunch of pros in here, we got second level headers, we can have tables in here. So there's a lot of things that we can do to kind of edit and make our READMEs look quite nice and appropriate for the situation. I'll probably discuss READMEs and best practices in another video. But for right now, we're just going to go ahead and say we do want to have a README. And so a very simple README will be initiated when we create this repo. All right, next we can add a .gitignore file. This is a file that actually allows us to ignore or not track certain files that we specify. And we're going to talk a little bit about this later on in this video, so I'm not going to go into too many details here. But for right now, we do want to create a .gitignore. And when we click on this, there's going to be a whole bunch of different languages or tooling that kind of pops up. And so we want to find something most associated with like the predominant language that we're using in our repo. And for us, we're going to be doing this in Python. So I'm going to go ahead and select the python.gitignore file. Okay, so the last thing that we can select is a license. So a license basically tells others what they can or cannot do with this code. And just because code is open source doesn't mean that we can do whatever we want. So a license is going to allow them or people coming to look at your code to understand like what can they do and what can they not do with that code if they want to go ahead and copy it and use it, or if they're not allowed to do that. So if I were to go back to this repo that I have for this class that I teach at University of Cincinnati, you can see that I have an MIT license, and it is automatically generated with the verbiage that comes with an MIT language. Okay, so I'm not going to go into the details of all the different licenses. You can see that there's a lot to choose from. For right now, I'm going to simply select MIT license, but if you want to learn more about what all these different licenses mean and ones that you should or should not use, then I would definitely recommend you check out the choosealicense.com. They got a lot of great information there. All right, so that's everything that I need to select. I'm going to go ahead and hit Create Repository. And now we can see we have a new repo generated. You can see it's under my GitHub account, Bad Dad Jokes, and you can see we have 3 files that are initiated with this this initial repo. We have our .gitignore, we have our license, and we have our readme. And we can see that we have readme is populated right here, so it just simply takes the name of our repo and the description that we gave it, and that kind of creates the initial readme. We can modify that however we want, and we can see that we have, in this case, we selected an MIT license, so we have our license verbiage all right here. All right, so we have this newly created repo on GitHub, but to do any work with it, I need to actually bring this repo down to my local machine so I can actually do some work directly in that project. So this requires us to do what's called cloning. And if you have not heard that term before, I describe and kind of discuss what cloning actually means in this video. So if you haven't heard that, go ahead and check that out. So in order to clone a repo, all I need to do is come up here and I can snag this URL provided on GitHub. And then I just go down to my terminal and I want to navigate to wherever I want to save this directory. So I've got a simple projects directory that contains some miscellaneous projects. And actually, I'll bring this over right here so you can kind of see here's just some random stuff in this projects directory. And I'm going to go ahead and do git clone and the URL that I grabbed from GitHub. And you can see that it downloaded, and we can see up here we now have Bad Dad Jokes. And if I were to open this up, you can see we have our readme, license, and .gitignore files that we had seen on GitHub before. They are now my local machine. If I wanted to go ahead and open this up, then I could just say Bad Dad Jokes. Open this up with my VS Code editor. And you can see I've got my readme in here, my license, and the .gitignore. I'm ready to go if I want to go ahead and modify this project.